By the time Anakin Skywalker put on the iconic black suit and became Darth Vader, there was barely anything left of the man and Jedi that he once was. Obi-Wan said it best.
He's more machine now than man.
Every scar, every replacement limb, every hiss of his respirator tells a part of the painful story. But just how much damage did Vader's body really take on Mustafar? Let's talk about it. This is every single Darth Vader injury explained. The first and most obvious injuries caused on Mustafar were the amputation of both of Anakin Skywalker's legs and his remaining biological arm, with the other one already cut off by Count Dooku on Geonosis. While attempting to leap over Obi-Wan Kenobi and his high ground, Anakin's old master's blade severed his arrogant and dangerous former apprentice's biological limbs. The left arm was cut off just above the elbow, while both legs were cut off in the mid-thigh region. Not only did these injuries render Vader useless and pretty much settle the intense battle between him and Obi-Wan, but they were the tip of the iceberg and the first of the debilitating injuries that Vader suffered on that fateful day. With one arm and both legs gone, Vader couldn't control his jump and landing, nor could he stop the subsequent fall and roll towards the banks of the lava river. His remaining mechanical arm provided a small amount of stability, and he used it to desperately claw at the ground as he fell and slid towards the blazing lava, thankfully managing to come to a stop only several feet from the lava river itself. There was one saving grace for Vader though. If his arms and legs had been removed via any other weapon, he would have bled out and died right there on the ashy lava flow banks. But luckily, the intense heat of lightsabers caused his wounds to instantly cauterize, meaning that despite the horrific nature of the injuries, they were still fairly clean cuts. Not only did this ultimately save his life, but it made it easier for prosthetics to be attached when the time came to rebuild Vader. Of course, he suffered many more injuries other than the loss of his limbs. For example, when he went crashing to the ground and rolling down the banks of the lava river, Vader suffered several broken and fractured bones. While these are pretty insignificant in comparison to the other injuries he suffered, it didn't make them any less painful or debilitating. Vader's several broken ribs made him trying to claw his way from the lava flow even more difficult and excruciating, and each movement would have caused a great deal of pain. As well as bones being broken, Vader also suffered internal injuries from the blunt force trauma of the physical impact on the hard and sharp rocks that were underfoot. He was coming down from quite a height and in a spin, meaning that he impacted the ground hard and at an unusual angle. Several of his organs were damaged pretty severely during his unfortunate fall and slide down the lava flow banks. Vader suffered liver and spleen lacerations, as well as a slight kidney rupture, all of which would have made him feel like his insides were on fire, being painfully twisted and tortured. But all of these injuries and issues were treatable, and ultimately nothing compared to the life-changing effects of the rest of the damage he received. The most severe of Vader's injuries were the burns he suffered as he tried to claw his way away from the lava. The intense heat caused the stumps of his legs to spontaneously combust, bursting into flames which quickly spread and engulfed his entire body. The fire not only burnt his flesh, but it also melted parts of his clothing to him, with chemicals from the materials seeping into his body, causing their own issues. Well, the flames burned out fairly quickly and the fire subsided. In the end, Vader received 3rd and 4th degree burns across over 95% of his entire body. These burns were excruciatingly painful, with Vader's nerves being destroyed, though the initial agony from those nerve endings being scorched was almost overwhelming. It was a miracle he didn't pass out from the pain, though the adrenaline and the shock of it all kept Vader lucid and all too aware of what was happening to him. Had he not been so steeped in the dark side, it was at this moment that Anakin would almost certainly have died. The burns were not only external though. The damage was so deep that even some of Vader's internal organs suffered damage. Many of them went into a kind of shock that stopped them from functioning properly, and these injuries alone would have been enough to kill Vader had he not received relatively immediate treatment. The burns also meant that infections could easily form and spread throughout Vader's body, again attacking his vital organs. In the hours following the injuries, Vader contracted several severe infections that medical droids battled to contain and overcome, something that would be difficult with a normal patient, never mind one with such devastating injuries as Vader. Another of the major issues that Vader faced following the battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi was that the burns and the intense heat from the lava flow had caused irreversible lung scarring. The flames that engulfed his body caused Vader to breathe in superheated air that seared the inside of his mouth, scorching down his windpipe and into his lungs. This massive damage caused even the simple act of breathing to become nearly impossible, and his lungs were barely able to handle what little oxygen he did take in. This was the most life-threatening of all of his injuries, and one that needed to be treated as soon as possible. While the severe burns and loss of limbs could be dealt with, the fact was that Vader needed to be able to breathe in order to survive. It's just a biological necessity for most beings within the galaxy. So, as soon as Vader was discovered by Darth Sidious and his clones on the lava banks, a special medical capsule was brought. This capsule contained Vader in a pressurized container which eased the burden of his breathing issues, while medics treated the most immediate of his injuries on the trip back to Coruscant. Once there, Vader's injuries were treated by the finest medical droids and doctors that Coruscant had to offer. They dealt with his burns, though there was nothing they could do about the massive scarring across Vader's entire body. They healed the internal organ injuries and provided medication to deal with the pain and recovery process. They also treated several infections that were raging through the Sith apprentice. Vader's arms and legs were replaced with new cybernetics, and the hardware was painstakingly interfaced with his remaining nerves to allow him to have movement in his new limbs. They got him into a stable condition. However, throughout the entire process, Vader was not given a drop of anesthesia to ease the pain. Emperor Palpatine intentionally kept him awake and conscious, ensuring he experienced an excruciating amount of pain, further strengthening his connection to the dark side of the Force, exaggerating his hate and anger. He felt every needle and tool that pried at his flesh during a surgery which lasted several hours. But no matter how thorough his medical treatment was, Vader would never 100% physically recover from the injuries he sustained on Mustafar, not even close. Therefore, he was put into a specially designed suit of armor that provided him with not only protection from the outside world, but also contained and treated many of the injuries that the medical experts couldn't fully heal. The most vital thing that the suit did was take over the functions of Vader's breathing. The damage was so bad that he could never naturally breathe on his own ever again without the help of the suit, apparatus, or a special pressurized chamber. The suit entirely automated that natural bodily function. Still, Vader's suit continued to cause pain and damage even after recovery. It was designed to not heal him, but rather keep him in a constant state of discomfort and pain to remind him of his past failures and keep him more closely connected to the dark side of the Force. By the way, if you want to find out more about Vader's suit, you can check out our deep dive video by clicking the link in the description or in the cards when you've finished watching this one. Vader did have a special back-to-tank in his fortress on Mustafar. When not helping to run the Empire or on missions for his master, Vader would spend hours in the tank, out of the suit, suspended in the blue liquid. It did help keep his injuries in check, though even the Bacta could only heal so much. Still, the back-to-baths were very brief moments of relief for the Dark Lord. But there was an injury that Vader was never able to heal, and that was the mental and psychological trauma of it all. He had been through so much and had suffered so much pain and discomfort and torture that his mind had become broken and twisted. He had fallen to the dark side to save Padme from dying, yet still failed to prevent it. As Anakin Skywalker, he had been one of the most powerful Jedi of all time, the Chosen One, but now he was a shadow of his former self. Indeed, the fact that Vader's castle was built on Mustafar, not too far from the site of his injuries, served to provide him with a constant reminder of his failures. It made sure that his mental and emotional turmoil never ended. His physical injuries took their toll, but it was Vader's mental injuries that really burdened him throughout the rest of his life. He never truly dealt with it, instead channeling his hate, anger, and frustrations into the dark side. Still, the truth is, Darth Vader could and should have died right there on the banks of the lava flow. His injuries were certainly enough to end his life, but somehow he survived. And while he never truly recovered, he was able to manage the pain and the limitations and lead a life of darkness, sadness, and ultimately, regret.